Woman obsessed with my husband tried to break up my marriage, got hit by karma. 16 years ago my husband and I were married with a 1-year-old little girl. We were high school sweethearts that went to different schools, met junior year and made it work. Where we went to different school I met John through my husband, but never met Sarah or Cindy. Still haven't met them in real life. One night my daughter and I spent the night at my sister's house with her 2 kids because her husband was out of town for work and she was heavily pregnant and needed help the night he would be gone. That night my husband's best friend John, been friends since 2nd grade, came over to our house to hang out with him. Next day my husband told me John's ex-girlfriend, Sarah, and her best friend, Cindy, came over to see John. John was already with a new girlfriend, Sandy. And that while John slept with Sarah in our spare bedroom, Cindy had tried to sleep with my tipsy husband. He kicked them out at like 2 a.m. My husband turned Cindy down, but apparently she had always had a crush on my husband. For a year afterward she would call his phone, didn't know how she got his number, we changed his number twice, she kept getting it and calling, playing music, saying lewd things, even sending emails saying how our daughter needed to be put down so she didn't end up being a beach like me. That they would jump me and bash my daughter's head and if they saw us out alone. Kept sending updates on where I went, asked how my doctor's appointment was, how store name was, creepy stalker stuff. For the longest time I refused to leave the house without my husband because I was seriously concerned they would hurt my daughter. For a year I felt trapped in my home. I vividly remember being 3 weeks postpartum after an emergency C-section with our second child and just holding my baby and sliding down the wall to sit and cry. Because she had called again. It was 2 or 3 times a week she would call. She always blocked her number and sent the emails from an anonymous email address. For a while I thought maybe my husband was talking to her, how else would she be getting his new numbers? I lost so much faith in him. I know he was mad about the situation and would scream into the phone to leave us alone. I saved every call log, email and recorded what I could. I sent an email to her throwaway and said I knew who she was and that I was going to the police for harassment. Spoiler alert, I already tried, but there wasn't enough evidence because she blocked her number and nothing traced back to her. However, we were 20, she was 19 and it scared her enough to leave us alone. 3 months of peace later and his best friend John came over with Sandy for dinner. Sandy and I were friends and would talk about everything with the crazies as we called them. She asked how everything with Cindy was going, and I asked her how she forgave John for sleeping with Sarah. She lost it because she didn't know. He lies, says he didn't and that my husband got it wrong, that they were just talking. Sandy didn't believe him and then John screamed at me. This is why I kept giving Cindy his number. She would be a better match for him. My husband threw John out and they yelled at each other outside for a while. Turns out John was upset my husband wasn't going out and partying with him. John thought it was me, not allowing my husband to go. But that wasn't true, my husband didn't want to go. He preferred to be home with me and our daughter. The few times he went out with John the first practically had to kick him out of the house to get him to go. John couldn't understand it was my husband who didn't want to go clubbing. My husband has never been a clubbing guy. He hates people and loud music. He kicked John out of our lives that night and husband hasn't spoken to him since. We changed his number one last time and never had any other issues. For her part Cindy got some serious karma. I couldn't help but laugh when I learned she married a guy a year later, had a kid and got cheated on and then he left her for another woman while she was pregnant. I usually don't enjoy others' misfortunes, however after the hell she put us though, especially during my pregnancy with our second child, I laughed when I heard. For John, he married Sandy, has 2 kids now and tried to get back in contact with us 13 years ago after he had his first kid. He wanted to apologize because apparently after having his own kid, he realized how screwed up he was, doing what he did. He called my husband's parents because they still had a landline at the time. My in-laws had already been told years earlier what happened and that under no circumstances were they to give out our numbers to him. So we went to my in-laws and my husband called him back and told him to never contact our family again. Side note, when husband called John back we found out Cindy wasn't following us like we though. John would tell her where we were going. So screw you John, you and that psycho Cindy.